The massive chamber buzzed with nervous energy as representatives from 47 different species filled their designated seats. Ambassador Hyun adjusted his simple black suit and looked around the room. In all his years serving humanity in the Galactic Council, he had never seen such fear in so many alien faces. The Kepler-7 station hung in the shadow of a neutron star, its walls humming with the energy needed to keep the diplomatic hub stable. Today, those walls seemed to vibrate with something else entirely: the weight of impending doom. Dr. Nari sat beside Hyun, her tablet displaying streams of data that made her frown deeper with each passing minute. As humanity's top xenobiologist, she understood alien behavior better than most humans. What she saw today scared her. "The readings are getting worse," she whispered to Hyun. "Every species here is showing maximum stress indicators. Even the Vectar are agitated, and they barely react to anything." The chamber fell silent as High Chancellor Veltar of the Crystalline Empire rose from his seat. His body, made of living crystal that normally gleamed with soft blue light, now pulsed with harsh red warnings. When a Vectar showed red, things were bad. "Fellow beings of the galaxy," Veltar's voice resonated through the chamber like wind chimes in a storm. "We face extinction. The ancient guardians have awakened." A holographic display materialized in the center of the room. It showed the galactic core, where massive structures moved between the stars like dark gods. Each structure was the size of a small moon, but they moved with purpose and intelligence that chilled everyone watching. "The Void Shepherds," Veltar continued. "Left behind by the architects millions of years ago, they were meant to maintain galactic order after their creators died. Instead, they have decided that all current life is by contamination." Hyun felt his stomach drop. He had heard rumors about ancient automated defense systems, but seeing them in action was different. The hologram showed entire star systems being systematically dismantled, their planets broken apart and reformed into perfect geometric shapes. "How long do we have?" asked the Nephilim representative, her gas-filled environmental suit hissing with each word. 6 months, replied the Altarian, mathematician, his forearms gesturing at probability calculations that floated in the air. "Give or take a few weeks. The shepherds move methodically, but they never stop." Captain Wu Jin's face appeared on the communication screen that linked to the human fleet. His weathered features showed the calm that came from years of military service, but Hyun could see the tension in his eyes. "What about resistance?" Wu Jin asked. "Surely our combined fleets can mount some kind of defense?" The chamber erupted in what could only be described as bitter laughter from dozens of different species. The sound was haunting, a mixture of clicks, hisses, musical tones, and electronic buzzes that somehow conveyed the same message: hopelessness. "We have run the calculations," said the Altarian. "The probability of success in direct confrontation is 0.003%. Effectively impossible. Our species has existed for 10 million years, added the Nephilim representative. In that time, we have learned to recognize unwinnable scenarios. This is one of them." One by one, the species began to announce their decisions. The Crystalline Empire would focus on preserving their historical archives in distant galaxies. The Altarians would evacuate their population to the Andromeda Galaxy. The Nephilim had already begun moving their gas giant cities beyond the galactic rim. Each announcement hit Hyun like a physical blow. These were civilizations that had survived cosmic disasters, species wars, and the collapse of previous galactic governments. If they were running, what hope did anyone have? "The Zephyrian Collective will withdraw to preserve our cultural heritage," announced a being that looked like a living aurora. "We have identified 17 galaxy clusters beyond the Shepherd's likely expansion path." "The Thermal Lords concur," added a representative whose body was pure energy contained in a magnetic field. "Preservation of species takes priority over territorial claims." More and more empty seats appeared as representatives excused themselves to begin evacuation procedures. The Great Chamber, built to house the entire galactic community, began to feel hollow and abandoned. Dr. Nari pulled up files on her tablet, her fingers moving quickly across the screen. "Hyun, "Look at this," she whispered. "Every single species that's leaving has one thing in common." "What's that?" "They all run probability calculations before making major decisions. They look at the math, see the odds, and make logical choices based on that data." Hyun nodded slowly. "And the math says we can't win." "Exactly. But humans—" She paused, looking around the nearly empty chamber. "Humans don't always listen to math." By the time the official session ended, only 3 beings remained in the vast space: Ambassador Hyun, Dr. Nari, and Captain Woo Jin on the communication screen. The silence was deafening after hours of alien voices declaring their retreat. "Hi." Chancellor Veltar's crystal form dimmed as he prepared to leave. "Ambassador Hyun," he said, his voice now tinged with something that might have been regret. "Your species has brought much innovation to the galaxy. We hope humanity will choose wisdom over bravery in this matter." Hyun stood up slowly, straightening his jacket. Around him, the empty seats seemed to echo with the weight of abandonment. Every logical species in the galaxy had looked at the problem and walked away. Every advanced civilization had calculated the odds and chosen survival over struggle. "Hi, Chancellor," Hyun said, his voice carrying clearly through the chamber. "I appreciate the advice, but I think you might be surprised by what humans consider wisdom." Veltar's crystal body flickered with confusion. "You cannot seriously be considering engagement with the shepherds. The mathematics are clear." Dr. Nari closed her tablet and stood beside Hyun. On the screen, Captain Woo Jin leaned forward, his jaw set in the way that meant he was ready for a fight. "You know," Hyun said, looking around the empty chamber, "there's something you should understand about humans. We're not very good at math. Oh, we can do it when we need to, but we don't let it make all our decisions for us." He walked toward the center of the chamber, where the holographic display still showed the shepherds methodically destroying star systems. "Every species here looked at this problem and saw impossible odds. You saw calculations that said failure was certain." "Because it is," Veltar insisted. "The shepherds possess technology beyond our understanding. They have had millions of years to perfect their systems. Any logical analysis shows that resistance is futile." Hyun smiled. And it was. The kind of smile that had worried alien diplomats for years. It was the smile of a species that had once looked at the impossible vastness of space and decided to explore it anyway. "Well," he said, his voice echoing in the empty chamber, "I guess we'll handle it then." The silence that followed was profound. Veltar's crystal form pulsed through several colors that Dr. Nari's tablet identified as confusion, disbelief, and something that might have been admiration. "You're serious," Veltar said finally. "Dead serious," Captain Woo Jin confirmed from the screen. "My crews are already running system checks. We'll need everything we can get, but we're not running away." Dr. Nari pulled up star charts on her tablet. "We'll need detailed information about the Shepherd's technology, their movement patterns, and any historical data about their creators." "You're talking about suicide," Veltar said, his voice now showing genuine concern. "Your entire species will be destroyed." "Maybe," Hyun admitted. "Probably, if we're being honest about it. But here's the thing about humans. We have a real problem with the word impossible. We tend to take it as a challenge rather than a warning." As the 3 humans began discussing logistics and strategy, Veltar remained frozen in the chamber. Across the galaxy, other species monitored the human communication channels with growing amazement. The beings they had dismissed as young and reckless were calmly planning to attempt the impossible. "I don't understand," Veltar said finally. "Why would you choose certain death over probable survival?" Hyun looked up from the star charts they were studying. "Because someone has to try. And if we don't, who will?" The crystal being had no answer for that. In all his species' millions of years of existence, they had never encountered a civilization that would willingly face impossible odds for no logical reason. As the humans continued their planning, word began to spread across the galaxy. The species that had abandoned the mission watched in fascination and horror as humanity prepared to do what every logical being had deemed impossible. They were going to fight the shepherds. And somehow, against all reason and probability, some small part of the galaxy began to hope that maybe, just maybe, the humans might actually have a chance. The news reached Earth within hours of the Galactic Council session. Admiral Do-hyun sat in his office at Fleet Command, watching the emergency broadcast with the same expression he might use to review routine patrol reports. Around him, his staff waited for orders that would either save the galaxy or destroy humanity. "Sir?" Commander So-min stood at attention beside his desk. "The civilian networks are going crazy. People want to know what we're going to do." Do-hyun turned off the broadcast and looked out his window at the shipyards orbiting Earth. Massive construction platforms stretched as far as the eye could see, filled with vessels from tiny fighters to massive dreadnoughts. It was the largest human fleet ever assembled, but compared to what they faced, it looked pathetically small. "What we're going to do," he said quietly, "is exactly what Ambassador Hyun promised. We're going to handle it." The response across human space was unlike anything in recorded history. When other species heard about impossible odds, they calculated survival strategies. When humans heard about impossible odds, they rolled up their sleeves and got to work. In the Mars shipyards, retired Admiral Kang came out of his pension to oversee the reactivation of mothballed destroyers. His weathered hands moved over control panels he hadn't touched in 20 years, bringing dead ships back to life with the efficiency of long practice. "These old girls haven't flown in decades," he told the engineers working around him. "But they were built to last, and they'll fly. Again, we're going to need every ship we can get." On Europa Station, Dr. Ji-won stared at holographic displays showing what little data they had about Shepard technology. Her team of physicists and engineers worked around the clock, fueled by coffee and the kind of desperate innovation that humans specialized in. "The energy signatures don't match anything in our databases," she told her assistant, Dr. Min-jae, as they studied sensor readings from destroyed star systems. "It's like they're using physics we haven't discovered yet." "So, what do we do?" Min-jae asked, rubbing his tired eyes. "We invent new physics," Ji-won said simply. "If they can break the rules, so can we." The laboratories on Europa became a 24-hour workshop of impossible experiments. Ji-won's team began developing what they called probability bombs, weapons that would exploit quantum uncertainty to bypass energy shields. The science was theoretical at best, and the prototypes had an alarming tendency to explode unexpectedly. "Dr. Ji-won," called out Engineer Hyuk from across the lab, "the quantum containment field just collapsed again. Should I try a different approach?" "Keep trying," she replied, not looking up from her calculations. "Failure is just another way of learning what doesn't work." Across human space, similar scenes played out on dozens of worlds. The Titan shipyards began producing new fighter designs based on suicide tactics that no sane species would consider. The asteroid mining colonies converted their equipment into kinetic bombardment weapons. Even the peaceful research stations began developing ways to turn their scientific instruments into tools of war. Commander So-min worked with tactical teams to develop strategies that other species would consider insane. Her war room was filled with holographic displays showing fleet movements that defied every accepted principle of space combat. "We can't match their firepower," she explained to a room full of ship captains, "so we won't try. Instead, we're going to use their size against them. These Shepards are massive, which means they're slow to change direction. We'll hit them fast, hit them hard, and get out before they can respond." Captain Tae-hoon raised his hand. "What about casualties? These tactics you're describing, they're basically suicide runs." So-min nodded grimly. "Yes, they are. And every pilot and crew member will be a volunteer. No one is being ordered to die for this mission." The silence in the room was heavy. Then, slowly, every captain in the room raised their hand. "We volunteer," Tae-hoon said simply. "All of us." Similar scenes played out across the human fleet. When calls went out for volunteers for the most dangerous missions, the response was overwhelming. Retired veterans came out of civilian life to cruise ships they hadn't seen in years. Civilian pilots offered their services, even though they had no military training. Even children too young to serve sent messages of support and offers to help however they could. Sergeant Min-soo led training exercises for the Special Forces teams that would attempt boarding actions against Shepard constructs. The training was brutal because the real thing would be worse. "Listen up," he told his troops as they practiced zero-gravity combat in asteroid fields. These things we're going to fight are bigger than anything you've ever seen. They're older than human civilization, and they're specifically designed to kill everything that isn't them." Private Sunho raised his hand. "Sergeant, what are our chances of survival?" Minsu grinned, and it was the kind of grin that had gotten humans in trouble throughout their history. "Honestly, pretty much zero, but that's never stopped us before." The sea. Training continued day and night. Human soldiers learned to fight in impossible conditions, using weapons that barely worked against enemies they didn't understand. They practiced boarding actions against mock-ups of Shepard constructs, knowing that the real thing would be nothing like their simulations. Meanwhile, the rest of the galaxy watched in amazement. The Crystalline Empire monitored human communications, with growing disbelief. The Altarians ran new probability calculations hourly, trying to understand what the humans were thinking. "Their behavior makes no logical sense," reported the Altarian mathematician to his superiors. "They know the odds of success are virtually zero, yet they continue preparations as if victory were certain. Perhaps they have access to information we lack," suggested another Altarian. "Negative. We have shared all relevant data with them. They are operating with the same information that led us to withdraw from the mission." The Vector observed human preparations with something approaching religious awe. In their millions of years of existence, they had never seen a species choose certain death over logical retreat. Their crystal formations began to sing haunting melodies that their historians would later recognize as songs of mourning and respect. Even the Thermal Lords, beings of pure energy who thought in terms of efficiency and optimization, found themselves fascinated by human irrationality. They began to wonder if there was something they had missed in their calculations. As the weeks passed, something unexpected began to happen. The species that had fled the mission started sending supplies. They claimed it was for historical documentation or scientific observation. But the truth was simpler. The humans had inspired them. The Crystalline Empire sent shield generators that could withstand temperatures found in stellar cores. The Altarians provided probability calculators that could predict enemy movements with unprecedented accuracy. Even the gas-dwelling Nephilim contributed atmospheric processors that could keep human ships operational in hostile environments. "Why are they helping us?" Dr. Nari asked Ambassador Hyun during one of their regular communication sessions. "Because we're doing something they can't," he replied. "We're giving them hope." The final preparations took place in the shadow of Jupiter, where the human fleet assembled for departure. Over 3,000 ships of every size and configuration hung in space like a metal constellation. It was beautiful and terrible at the same time. Admiral Do-hyun stood on the bridge of his flagship, looking out at the fleet he would lead to almost certain destruction. Around him, his crew worked with the calm efficiency of people who had accepted their fate and chosen to face it with dignity. "Sir," Commander So-min reported, "all ships report ready for departure. We're just waiting for your word." Do-hyun nodded, then opened a communication channel to the entire fleet. "This is Admiral Do-hyun to all ships. In approximately 6 hours, we will depart for the Galactic Core to engage the Shepard constructs. I want everyone to understand what we're doing here." He paused, looking out at the ships that represented humanity's greatest achievement and possibly its final act. "Every logical species in the galaxy has told us this mission is impossible. They've shown us calculations that prove we can't win. They've demonstrated that fighting the Shepards is suicide." His voice carried clearly to every ship in the fleet. "They're probably right." Another pause. On ships throughout the fleet, crews listened with the attention that came from knowing these might be among the last words they heard from home. "But here's what they don't understand about humans," Do-hyun continued. "We don't fight because we think we can win. We fight because someone has to. We fight because giving up isn't in our nature. And sometimes, just sometimes, that's enough." The response was immediate. Across 3,000 ships, human voices began to cheer. Not with the false bravado of people trying to convince themselves they were brave, but with the genuine enthusiasm of a species that had looked at impossible odds and decided to try anyway. As the fleet prepared for departure, messages began arriving from Earth and the colonies. Children had made drawings of spaceships defeating monsters. Poets had written verses about heroes flying into darkness. Musicians had composed songs that would never be performed because the only people who would appreciate them were about to die. The most powerful message came from a simple text transmission sent from a retirement home on Mars. Go G. Captain Taehyun gripped the armrests of his command chair as his destroyer, the Soul's Pride, dropped out of hyperspace at the edge of Shepard territory. Around him, his bridge crew worked with the focused intensity of people who knew they were about to see something that would change everything. "Sensors coming online," reported Lieutenant Bora from her station. "Sir, you need to see this." The main screen flickered to life, and every human on the bridge fell silent. They had prepared for this moment, studied the data, and tried to imagine what they would face. Nothing had prepared them for the reality. The Void Shepards weren't ships. They were architecture. Massive structures that defied easy description floated between the stars like dark cathedrals built by gods who had forgotten how to dream of anything but perfection. Each construct was the size of a small moon, but they moved with purpose and grace that made them seem alive. "My God," whispered Chief Sang-hoon from the engineering station. "How do you fight something like that?" The closest Shepard hung in. Space about 50,000 kilometers away, its surface covered in geometric patterns that seemed to shift and change as they watched. Crystalline spires jutted from its hull at impossible angles, and energy flowed between them in streams of light that hurt to look at directly. "Dr. Haeun to the bridge," Taehyun called over the intercom. "We need our xenoarchaeologist up here now." Dr. Haeun arrived within minutes, her equipment bag slung over her shoulder and her eyes wide with excitement despite the danger. She had spent her career studying ancient civilizations, but she had never imagined she would see something like this. "Captain, these readings are incredible," she said, connecting her scanners to the ship's systems. "The energy signatures suggest technology. That's millions of years old, but it's still perfectly functional. This isn't just a machine. It's a work of art." "Art that's about to kill us," muttered Lieutenant Kyung from the communication station. "Sir, I'm detecting movement from the construct. It's changing course toward us." Taehyun nodded grimly. "All ships, prepare for engagement. Remember, we're here to learn as much as we are to fight. Whatever happens, make sure the data gets back to the fleet." The Shepard construct moved like a living thing, rotating slowly to bring weapons to bear that the humans couldn't even see. There was something terrifyingly beautiful about its movements, like watching a ballet performed by something that existed beyond normal physics. "Weapons hot," reported Tactical Officer Jahoon. "All batteries ready to fire." "Fire at will," Taehyun ordered. The Soul's Pride and her escort ships opened fire with everything they had. Particle beams, kinetic projectiles, and nuclear missiles streaked toward the Shepard construct in a display of human firepower that would have devastated any conventional target. The weapons struck the construct's surface and simply disappeared. Not deflected, not absorbed. They just ceased to exist, as if they had never been fired at all. "Sir," Jahoon's voice was shaky, "our weapons are having no effect. It's like they're not even hitting anything." The Shepard's response was swift and terrible. A beam of energy that seemed to be made of crystallized mathematics lashed out from one of its spires. It touched the destroyer Busan's Hope for less than a second, and the ship simply came apart. Not exploded, not destroyed. It unraveled like a sweater with a pulled thread. "Evasive maneuvers!" Taehyun shouted. But even as his ship began to turn, 2 more destroyers died in the same impossible way. The Shepard weapon didn't just destroy ships. It unmade them, reducing matter to its component atoms with casual efficiency. "All ships fall back," he ordered. "Maximum distance now." The surviving human ships retreated to a safer distance, their crews shaken by what they had witnessed. In less than 5 minutes, they had lost 3 ships without inflicting any damage whatsoever on their target. "Status report," Taehyun called out. "Hull integrity at 96%, Chief Sang-hoon reported. "But Captain, our sensors recorded something strange during the attack." "The Shepard weapon? It was trying to communicate with us." Dr. Haeun looked up from her instruments, her face pale. "He's right. The energy patterns in that beam weren't just destructive. They were complex, almost like a language." Lieutenant Kyung nodded from her station. "I've been analyzing the transmission patterns. Sir, the Shepards are trying to talk to us." Taehyun felt a chill that had nothing to do with the ship's environmental systems. "What are they saying?" I'm not sure, Kyung replied, her fingers flying over her controls. But whatever it is, it's not a threat or a warning. It's more like an invitation. Dr. Hayan connected her translation software to the communications array. Captain, I think I can decode some of this. The shepherds use a form of mathematical communication that expresses concepts through geometric relationships. She worked for several minutes while the crew watched the shepherd construct in the distance. It had stopped moving and seemed to be waiting for something. Got it, she said finally. The message is simple. Join the perfection. Become eternal. Leave chaos behind. The bridge fell silent as the implications sank in. The shepherds weren't just destroying civilizations. They were trying to convert them. Sir, Chief Sang-hoon called from engineering, I'm detecting some unusual readings from our hull. It's like the shepherd weapon did something to our atomic structure. The damage isn't visible, but it's there. Dr. Hayan ran new scans and frowned at the results. The shepherd beam didn't just try to destroy us. It was analyzing us, learning how we're built. And I think it was trying to improve us. She pulled up a holographic display showing molecular diagrams. Look at this. The beam tried to reorganize our hull plating into a more efficient crystalline structure. If the exposure had lasted longer, it might have converted our entire ship into something like the shepherd constructs. Tae-hyun stared at the display, understanding dawning in his eyes. They're not trying to kill us. They're trying to save us. From their perspective, organic life is just an unfinished version of what we could become. That's what makes them so dangerous, Dr. Hayan agreed. They genuinely believe they're helping. Every civilization they've perfected has been converted into part of their vision of universal order. The tactical situation began to make more sense. The shepherds weren't conquerors. They were missionaries, spreading their idea of perfection across the galaxy, whether other species wanted it or not. Sir, Lieutenant Kyung reported, I'm receiving new transmissions from the construct. It's sending detailed instructions on how to modify our ship's systems to achieve optimal efficiency. Delete those files, Tae-hyun ordered immediately. We can't risk anyone accidentally implementing their improvements. As the human scouts continued to study their enemy, reports came in from other engagement zones. Captain Yuna's squadron had encountered a different type of shepherd construct, one that seemed to specialize in planetary conversion. Captain Jong-ho's ships had discovered what appeared to be a shepherd factory, churning out new constructs from the raw material of a dismantled star system. Each encounter taught the humans more about their enemy, but the lessons were terrifying. The shepherds possessed technology that was indistinguishable from magic. They could manipulate matter at the atomic level, bend space-time to their will, and convert entire worlds into perfectly ordered geometric shapes. Worse, they were learning too. Each human ship that engaged them provided the shepherds with new data about organic technology and tactics. They were adapting their conversion techniques to be more effective against human vessels. Captain, Dr. Hayan said, studying the latest reports, I think I understand what we're really fighting. The shepherds aren't just following programming, they're following aesthetics. They have a vision of what the galaxy should look like, and they're reshaping everything to match that vision. She pulled up images of shepherd-converted star systems. Planets had been reshaped into perfect spheres. Moons were arranged in mathematically precise orbits. Even the stars themselves had been modified to burn with colors that created pleasing geometric patterns across the electromagnetic spectrum. It's beautiful, she admitted reluctantly. Terrifying, but beautiful. They're turning the entire galaxy into a work of art. Art that doesn't include us, Tae-hyun pointed out. Oh, but it does, Dr. Hayan corrected. We would be part of their masterpiece. We just wouldn't be human anymore. As the scout fleet regrouped and prepared their reports for Admiral Do-hyun, they faced a sobering reality. The shepherds weren't evil in any conventional sense. They were artists working on a scale that spanned galaxies, using civilizations as their medium and perfection as their goal. That made them infinitely more dangerous than any mere conqueror. Conquerors could be reasoned with, negotiated with, or fought using conventional tactics. But how do you fight an enemy that wants to save you from yourself? Sir, Chief Sang-hoon called from engineering, I think I've found something. The shepherd weapon that hit us. It left traces in our hull metal. I've been analyzing the molecular changes, and there's a pattern. He displayed his findings on the main screen. The conversion process isn't perfect. It leaves behind quantum instabilities that accumulate over time. The older a shepherd construct is, the more these instabilities build up. Dr. Hyun examined the data with growing excitement. You're right. They're so focused. Major Yuna checked her armor seals one final time as the assault shuttle approached the shepherd construct. Around her, 12 of humanity's best soldiers prepared for a mission that every military manual would have classified as suicide. They were about to attempt something that no species in galactic history had ever tried: boarding an active shepherd vessel. 2 minutes to insertion, called pilot Junho from the cockpit. The hole that Captain Taehyun's ships blasted in their hull is still open, but it won't stay that way long. These things repair themselves faster than we can damage them. Yuna nodded and turned to address her team. Remember, we're not here to destroy this thing. We're here to learn how it works and find a way to shut it down from the inside. Stay together, document everything, and don't touch anything that glows. Corporal Insu laughed nervously. Ma'am, everything in there glows according to the sensor readings. Then don't touch anything, Yuna replied with a grim smile. Technician Jiho, are your interface devices ready? Jiho patted the equipment pack on his back. As ready as they can be for technology we don't understand. I've got quantum interfaces, neural link adapters, and a bunch of stuff I invented on the way here. One of them might work. Dr. So-young, the mission's xenopsychologist, looked pale but determined. Major, based on the communication patterns we've observed, I believe the shepherds will try to convert us rather than kill us outright. That might give us more time than we expect. Or it might make things worse, Yuna pointed out. Being turned into a crystalline perfection bot doesn't sound much better than being dead. The shuttle shuddered as it passed through the shepherd's energy field. Immediately, their instruments began registering impossible readings. Gravity was pulling in 3 directions at once. Time seemed to be moving at different speeds in different parts of the shuttle. The hull metal started to sing in harmonies that hurt their ears. 30 seconds, Junho called out, his voice strained. Whatever you're going to do in there, do it fast. This ship won't survive much more exposure to their technology. Yuna activated her helmet comm. All teams, remember your objectives. Team Alpha will secure the entry point. Team Beta will map the internal structure. Team Gamma will look for anything that might be a control center, and whatever happens, don't get separated. The shuttle touched down on the shepherd's hull with a vibration that felt wrong in ways that human senses weren't designed to process. Through the breach that human weapons had torn in the construct's surface, they could see corridors that stretched into crystalline darkness. Go! 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 Yuna shouted. The boarding team leaped from the shuttle onto the shepherd's hull and immediately discovered that the laws of physics were more like suggestions here. Gravity existed, but it pointed toward the walls instead of the floor. The air was breathable but tasted like mathematics. Their footsteps echoed in colors. Stay close, Yuna commanded as they moved through the breach. Jiho, are you getting any readings on their technology? I'm getting too many readings, he replied, his instruments beeping frantically. Ma'am, this place is built from materials that shouldn't exist. The walls are made of crystallized time, the floor is solid light, and those support beams appear to be constructed from pure geometry. They moved deeper into the construct, their helmet lights revealing architecture that challenged human understanding. Corridors branched off in directions that didn't correspond to 3-dimensional space. Stairs led upward and downward simultaneously. Doorways opened onto rooms that were somehow larger than the spaces they occupied. Dr. So-young, Yuna called to the xenopsychologist. Are you sensing any kind of intelligence in here? Yes, she replied, her voice filled with wonder and terror. It's everywhere. The entire construct is alive, but not in any way we understand life. It's like being inside the mind of a mathematician who's been dreaming for millions of years. Corporal, Insu raised his weapon as something moved in the shadows ahead. Contact front! But what emerged from the darkness wasn't a threat in any conventional sense. It was a being of living crystal, humanoid in shape, but composed entirely of the same geometric patterns they had seen on the shepherd's hull. It moved with fluid grace and regarded them with eyes that held the wisdom of eons. Welcome, it said, its voice like wind chimes made of starlight. We have been waiting for you to accept our gift. Dr. So-young stepped forward, her recording, equipment capturing every word. You're one of the original inhabitants, aren't you? You were here when the shepherds arrived. We were chaos, the being replied. Now we are order. We were mortal. Now we are eternal. We were imperfect. Now we are beautiful. Yuna felt a chill that had nothing to do with the construct's temperature. You're showing us what happens to species that get converted. We are showing you what you will become, the crystal being corrected. The pain of organic existence will end. The inefficiency of biological processes will be optimized. You will become part of the greatest work of art ever conceived. As they moved deeper into the construct, they encountered more converted beings. Each one had once been a member of a different species, but now they all shared the same crystalline perfection. They moved in perfect harmony, working together on tasks that seemed to involve reshaping reality itself. Jiho, Yuna whispered, please tell me you're finding something we can use. Maybe, he replied, connecting his equipment to what appeared to be a control interface. These systems are incredibly advanced, but they're also incredibly old. I'm detecting quantum decay patterns that suggest they haven't been properly maintained in millennia. He worked quickly, his fingers dancing over instruments that were trying to interface with technology beyond human comprehension. Ma'am, I think I've found something. The shepherd's perfection is their weakness. They've optimized everything so completely that they can't adapt to unexpected variables. What kind of variables? Yuna asked. Chaos, Jiho said with growing excitement. They literally cannot process true randomness. Their entire system is based on mathematical perfection, which means they have no defense against genuine entropy. Dr. Soyoung was deep in conversation with one of the converted beings, trying to understand their psychology. They remember their original forms, she reported, but they consider those memories to be symptoms of a disease they've been cured of. They're genuinely happy with what they've become. That's horrifying, Corporal Insu muttered. No, Dr. Soyoung corrected. That's what makes them so dangerous. They're not evil or malicious. They genuinely believe they're saving us. From their perspective, organic life is a tragic mistake that they can fix. The team continued to explore, documenting everything they found. The shepherd construct was like a city-sized organism with systems that pulsed and flowed like blood vessels carrying pure energy instead of biological fluids. At its heart, they found something that might have been a control center. This is it, Jiho breathed, connecting his equipment to the central nexus. This is where they coordinate their operations across the galaxy. The interface was unlike anything human technology had ever encountered. Instead of displays and controls, it used direct neural connection to translate thoughts into reality. Jiho hesitated for a moment, then plugged his neural link into the system. Immediately, his consciousness was flooded with the awareness of the entire shepherd network. He could see every construct, every converted world, every species that had been improved across the galaxy. The scope of their operation was staggering. They had been working for millions of years, slowly perfecting one star system at a time, but he also saw their fatal flaw. The shepherds operated according to patterns that were mathematically perfect, but completely predictable. They couldn't account for beings who acted against their own logical self-interest. The concept of sacrifice was literally incomprehensible to their programming. I've got it, he gasped, disconnecting from the interface. I know how to hurt them. We need to introduce chaos into their systems, not random destruction, but genuine entropy. They can't process it. Major Yuna nodded grimly. Can you do it from here? I can try, but... Jiho hesitated. Ma'am, if I do this, it'll probably alert every shepherd in the galaxy to our presence, and it might not work at all. Do it, Yuna ordered. That's what we came here for. Jiho reconnected to the interface and began the most delicate sabotage operation in human history. Instead of trying to destroy the shepherd systems, he began introducing small, random variables into their calculations. Tiny errors that would cascade through their network, creating the kind of chaos that their perfected minds couldn't comprehend. The reaction was immediate. Throughout the construct, alarms began to sound, not mechanical sirens, but harmonic resonances that expressed the shepherd's growing confusion. The converted beings around them stopped their work and turned to stare at the humans with expressions of bewilderment. It's working, Jiho reported, sweat beading on his forehead despite the construct's cool temperature. Their entire network is trying to recalculate everything to account for the random variables I introduced. But every time they solve one problem, I introduce another one. The construct began to shake as its system struggled to process the incomprehensible concept of true randomness. Lights flickered, gravity fluctuated, and the geometric patterns on the walls began to shift. Admiral Do-Yun stood in the war room aboard his flagship, staring at a holographic display that showed the tactical situation across the galaxy. Red markers indicated Shepard constructs, and there were far too many of them. Blue markers showed human fleet positions, and there were far too few. "Status report," he ordered, his voice betraying none of the exhaustion he felt after weeks of impossible battles. Commander Somin stepped forward, her uniform rumpled from days of continuous planning. "Sir, we've successfully disabled 17 Shepard constructs using the chaos insertion technique developed by technician Jiho. However, for every construct we disable, 3 more emerge from the galactic core." She gestured to the display, highlighting a stream of new contacts moving outward from the galaxy's center. "At our current rate of engagement, we'll run out of ships and personnel long before we can clear all the Shepards. The mathematics are brutal." Dr. Jiwon joined them at the tactical display, her lab coat stained with chemical burns from her latest experiments. "Admiral, I've been analyzing the data from our boarding missions. The Shepards aren't just randomly distributed across the galaxy. They're all connected to a central hub." She manipulated the hologram to show energy flow patterns between the Shepard constructs. "Look at this. Every construct we've encountered is receiving constant updates and instructions from something at the galactic core. If we could disable that central hub, the entire network would collapse," Do-Yun finished. "But the galactic core isn't exactly a tourist destination. The gravitational forces alone would tear apart any ship that got too close." Engineer Minho, who had been quietly working at a side console, looked up from his calculations. "Actually, sir, I think we might have a solution to that problem. It's completely insane, but it might work." He transferred his work to the main display, showing a weapon design that made everyone in the room fall silent. "I call it a reality bomb. It exploits the quantum instabilities that exist near black holes to create a cascade failure in space-time itself." Dr. Jiwon studied the schematics with growing amazement and horror. "Minho, this isn't just a weapon. This is a device that could fundamentally alter the structure of reality in the galactic core." "That's the idea," he replied calmly. "The Shepards operate according to mathematical perfection. If we create a region of space where mathematics itself becomes unstable, their technology simply can't function." Admiral Do-Hyun examined the weapon specifications with the expression of a man contemplating the end of the world. "What are the risks?" "Complete annihilation of everything within a 50-light-year radius," Minho said matter-of-factly. "Possible creation of a stable wormhole to another dimension. Potential collapse of the local space-time continuum. Oh, and the weapon can only be detonated manually from close range. So whoever delivers this thing dies," Commander Somin observed. "Almost certainly," Minho confirmed. "The delivery ship would need to get within a few kilometers of the target before detonation. At that range, the gravitational forces and exotic radiation would be lethal even before the weapon goes off." The war room fell silent as the implications sank in. They were discussing a plan that would require someone to fly directly into the most dangerous region of space, carrying a weapon that might destroy reality itself, on a mission that was guaranteed to be suicide. "I'll do it," said a voice from the doorway. Everyone turned to see Captain Yunji standing at the entrance to the war room. Her uniform was pristine despite weeks of combat, and her expression held the calm determination that had made her one of humanity's best pilots. "Captain, you understand what this mission entails," Admiral Do-Hyun said carefully. "Yes, sir. Someone has to deliver the weapon and someone has to die doing it. I volunteer." Dr. Jiwon shook her head. "Yunji, this isn't like the other suicide missions we've run. There's no chance of survival, no possibility of rescue. You would be flying directly into the heart of a black hole cluster." "I know," Yunji replied simply. "But if it stops the Shepards, if it saves the galaxy, then it's worth it." Word of the planned mission spread through the fleet with the speed that only desperate hope could achieve. Within hours, Captain Yunji had received over 1,000 requests from volunteers who wanted to join her final mission. She accepted only a skeleton crew, people who understood exactly what they were signing up for, Engineer Seok volunteered, to maintain the weapon systems during the approach. "If this thing breaks down before we reach the target, the whole mission fails," he explained. "Someone needs to keep it running." Pilot Hajin insisted on joining as co-pilot. "You're the best pilot in the fleet, Captain. But even you can't fly this mission alone. The gravitational effects near the galactic core require constant course corrections." Dr. Moran, a physicist who had worked on the reality bomb project, rounded out the crew. "Someone needs to arm the device and ensure proper detonation. I helped build it, so I should be the one to trigger it." As the crew prepared for their mission, the rest of the human fleet engaged in increasingly desperate battles across the galaxy. Every day brought new Shepard constructs, each more powerful than the last. The alien technology was adapting to human tactics, developing countermeasures to the chaos insertion technique. "They're learning too fast," reported Captain Wu Jin during a fleet-wide briefing. "The constructs we're facing now are immune to the sabotage methods that worked last week. We need that reality bomb soon, or we're going to run out of effective tactics." Meanwhile, something unexpected was happening across the galaxy. The species that had abandoned the mission were starting to return. Not in force, but in small groups of volunteers who couldn't stand watching the humans fight alone. A squadron of crystalline Empire warships arrived first, their hulls gleaming with protective resonance fields. "We come to observe," their commander announced, "and to learn from human courage." The Altarians sent their finest probability calculators to help plan the final mission. "Your tactics defy our mathematics," their lead mathematician admitted. "But your success rate suggests that our calculations are incomplete." Even a few thermal lords manifested near the fleet, their energy forms providing additional power to human weapon systems. "Efficiency is not the only measure of value," one of them pulsed in their electromagnetic language. The return of other species provided much-needed support, but it also added pressure to the mission. The galaxy was watching, hoping that humanity's impossible plan might actually work. Captain Yunji's ship, renamed the Final Answer for its last mission, underwent extensive modifications to survive the journey to the galactic core. The hull was reinforced with crystalline armor provided by the Vectar. The engines were enhanced with probability drives donated by the Altarians. The life support systems were backed up with energy patterns contributed by the thermal lords. "It's the most advanced ship in the galaxy," Engineer Minho reported as he finished the final modifications. "It's also going to be the shortest lived." The reality bomb itself was a marvel of desperate engineering. Contained within a housing no larger than a shuttlecraft, it held enough concentrated chaos to unravel the fundamental forces that held space-time together. Just looking at it made people uncomfortable, as if their minds instinctively knew they were seeing something that shouldn't exist. "Remember," Dr. Jiwan told the Final Answers crew during their final briefing, "the weapon has to be detonated at the exact center of the Shepard production facility, too far away, and the effect won't be strong enough to disable their network. Too close, and the explosion might create a permanent tear in reality." "How close is too close?" asked Pilot Hajin. "We don't know," Dr. Jiwan admitted. "This is all theoretical. We're essentially conducting the most dangerous experiment in galactic history." The night before departure, Captain Yunji walked through the fleet, visiting friends and colleagues she would never see again. The conversations were brief and carefully normal, as if acknowledging the finality of the situation would somehow make it more real. "Take care of yourself out there," she told Admiral Do-hyun during their final meeting. "You too," he replied, then caught himself. I know what you mean," Yunji said with a sad smile. "And I will. I'll take care of all of us." The Final Answer departed at dawn, if dawn had any meaning in the depths of space. Its crew of 4 volunteers flew toward the galactic core, carrying the hopes of every living being in the galaxy and a weapon that might destroy reality itself. Behind them, the human fleet prepared for what might be the final battle. If the reality bomb worked, the Shepard threat would end. If it failed, humanity would make their last stand among the stars, fighting until the end against impossible odds. Either way, they had chosen their path. When every logical species had calculated the odds and walked away, humans had looked at the same impossible mathematics and decided to try anyway. As the final answer disappeared into hyperspace, Admiral Do-Yun stood at his bridge viewport and watched the stars. Somewhere out there, 4 humans were flying toward certain death in the hope of saving everyone else. "Sir," Commander Soman said quietly, "are we doing the right thing?" Do-Yun considered the question for a long moment. "I don't know if it's right," he said finally, "but it's what we do. When someone has to try the impossible, humans volunteer. When someone has to make the—" Captain Yunji gripped the controls of the final answer as the ship dropped out of hyperspace at the edge of the galactic core. Through the reinforced viewport, she could see something that no human eyes had ever witnessed: the birthplace of the shepherds. The megastructure defied description. It wrapped around 3 dancing black holes like a metallic spiderweb, drawing energy from their event horizons to power the creation of new shepherd constructs. The structure was larger than entire. Star systems, its surface covered in construction bays where moon-sized vessels took shape from pure mathematics and crystallized time. "My God," whispered Pilot Hodgin from the co-pilot's seat. "How many ships has that thing built?" Engineer Sayok checked his instruments. "Based on the energy flow patterns, I'd estimate it's been producing 1 new construct every 6 hours for the past 3 million years. We're looking at the source of the largest fleet in galactic history." Dr. Moran worked frantically at her console, preparing the reality bomb for deployment. "The quantum instabilities are even stronger than we calculated. The weapon should have maximum effectiveness here, but we need to get much closer." Around the megastructure, hundreds of shepherd constructs moved in perfect formation, their crystalline hulls reflecting the hellish light of the black holes. They had detected the final answer's arrival and were converging to investigate this intrusion into their sacred space. "Incoming transmission," Hodgin reported. "It's from the shepherds." "Put it through," Yunji ordered. The communication was unlike anything they had experienced before. Instead of words or images, it was pure concept, transmitted directly into their minds. They felt the shepherds' confusion at their presence, their gentle concern for these organic beings who had wandered into such a dangerous place. "Turn back, small ones," the message seemed to say. "This place will destroy your fragile forms. Allow us to preserve you in eternal perfection before you are lost to entropy." "Reply with our standard response," Yunji said grimly. Hodgin activated the transmitter. "Thanks for the offer, but we'll handle it ourselves." The final answer began its approach to the megastructure, dodging between the massive shepherd constructs that moved to intercept it. The ship's enhanced engines, boosted by alien technology, gave it speed and maneuverability that surprised their pursuers. "They're not trying to destroy us," Sayok observed as energy beams passed harmlessly around their ship. "They're trying to capture us." "Of course they are," Dr. Moran replied, not looking up from her work on the reality bomb. "They want to convert us, not kill us. From their perspective, we're precious organic life that needs to be preserved." The irony wasn't lost on any of them. The beings they were about to destroy genuinely cared about their welfare. The shepherds saw themselves as gardeners tending to the galaxy's chaotic life, nurturing it toward perfect order. As they drew closer to the megastructure, the effects of the black holes became more pronounced. Time began to flow differently in various parts of the ship. Gravity pulled in directions that didn't exist. The hull started to sing in harmonies that made their bones ache. "Hull integrity at 70% and falling," Siak reported. "The gravitational shear is tearing us apart at the molecular level." "How much closer do we need to get?" Yunji asked. Dr. Miran checked her calculations one final time. 2 kilometers from the central core. At our current approach vector, we have maybe 10 minutes before the ship breaks apart completely. Behind them, the space battle of the century was beginning. Admiral Do-Hyun's fleet had arrived at the galactic core, engaging the outer defenses of the Shepherd megastructure. Human ships, supported by volunteers from dozens of other species, threw themselves against constructs that outmassed them 1,000 to 1. "Admiral Do-Hyun to final answer," came the transmission from the flagship. "We're keeping them busy out here, but we can't hold them forever. Whatever you're going to do it fast." "Understood," Yunji replied. "We're almost in position." The battle raging around them was unlike anything in recorded history. Human destroyers used suicide tactics, ramming Shepherd constructs at relativistic speeds. Crystalline Empire warships created interference patterns that disrupted Shepherd. communication networks. Altarian probability bombs opened holes in spacetime that swallowed entire enemy formations. But for every Shepard construct that fell, two more emerged from the megastructure's construction bays. The ancient factory was producing vessels faster than the combined fleet could destroy them. 1 kilometer to target, Hajin announced, his voice strained as the ship's systems began to fail around them. Captain, the navigation computer just died. I'm flying this thing manually. The final answer shuddered as pieces of its hull began to separate under the impossible stresses of the galactic core. Warning lights flashed as life support systems struggled to maintain atmosphere in a region where physics itself was breaking down. Reality bomb is armed and ready, Dr. Moran reported. But I need to be at the exact center of the megastructure for maximum effect. If I detonate it too early, we might not take out the entire network. Yunji nodded, her hands steady on the controls despite everything falling apart around her. Then we get you there. The ship lurched as another section of hull tore away. Through the growing holes in their protection, they could see the megastructure's central core, a sphere of crystallized energy that pulsed with the heartbeat of galactic creation. 500 meters, Hajin called out. Captain, the engines are failing. We're not going to make it. Yunji looked at the distance remaining and made a decision that would have impressed even the most reckless human pilot. Everyone hold on. We're going to finish this manually. She fired the ship's emergency thrusters, not to slow their approach but to accelerate it. The final answer, already breaking apart, screamed toward the megastructure's core at a speed that would ensure total destruction on impact. 200 meters, Hajin shouted over the sound of rending metal. 100 meters! Dr. Moran had her hand on the detonation trigger, waiting for the perfect moment. 50 meters! Now! Yunji shouted. Dr. Moran triggered the reality bomb just as the final answer struck the megastructure's core. For a moment that lasted eternity, the universe held its breath. Then reality exploded. The bomb didn't just destroy the megastructure. It unraveled the fundamental forces that held the galactic core together. Space-time twisted into impossible geometries as the weapon's chaotic energy spread outward at the speed of light. The effect was immediate and absolute. Every Shepard construct within the expanding wave of chaos simply stopped functioning. Their perfect crystalline forms, dependent on mathematical precision, couldn't exist in a region where mathematics itself had become unstable. Admiral Do-hyun watched from his flagship as the wave of destruction spread through the Shepard fleet. One by one, the ancient constructs went dark, their million-year mission finally ended by 4 humans who had refused to accept the impossible. Status report, he called out, his voice filled with disbelief. Sir, Commander Soman replied, staring. At her instruments, the Shepard network is collapsing. Every construct in the galaxy has gone offline. The threat is over. Across the fleet, human crews began to cheer. They had done the impossible. They had saved the galaxy by refusing to accept defeat. But the celebration was muted by the knowledge of what it had cost. The final answer and her crew were gone, vaporized in the instant they had saved everyone else. Sir, the communications officer reported, we're receiving transmissions from across the galaxy. The other species, they're calling it a miracle. Admiral, Do-hyun nodded slowly. Signal the fleet. We're going home. 3 months later, Ambassador Hyun stood once again before the Galactic Council. But this time, the chamber was packed beyond capacity. Representatives from species that had fled the crisis had returned to witness this historic moment. Ambassador Hyun. High Chancellor Veltar's crystal form gleamed with respectful blue light. The Galactic Council wishes to formally thank humanity for their extraordinary service. Your species has saved us all. The chamber erupted in sounds of agreement, clicks, hisses, musical tones, and electronic harmonics that somehow combined into a universal expression of gratitude. We don't understand how. You did it, admitted the Altarian mathematician. Our calculations still show that your mission should have been impossible. Hyun smiled the same smile that had worried alien diplomats for years. That's the thing about humans. We're not very good at accepting other people's definitions of impossible. The Thermal Lord representative pulsed with curious energy patterns. But why? Why did your species choose certain death over logical retreat? What drove you to attempt something that every rational analysis said would fail? Hyun considered the question for a moment. looking around the chamber at the faces of beings who had lived for millennia, who had seen the rise and fall of civilizations, who had calculated probabilities and made logical decisions based on mathematical certainties. Because someone had to try, he said simply, because walking away felt wrong. Because when the choice is between impossible odds and giving up, humans tend to choose the impossible odds. The chamber fell silent as the implications of that statement sank in. These beings had spent eons learning to make rational decisions, to calculate risks and benefits, to choose survival over sacrifice. T.